Hey YouTube, Parson Rick here again. Haven't really been on for a while, but with all the Halloween stuff going on, a story came to my mind. Now I'm at work, so according to Oregon law, I cannot smoke at work. And but I did just get out of my truck. I think I told you guys before that my old Ford, 40 years old, it has a hard time starting in the morning, just like I do. And I have found that once I get it started, if I pack my Country Gentleman, light it, and get it going, that's as long as it needs to warm up, and I can get to work without it dying on me. So every morning I've been smoking my Country Gentleman, and I've been putting this Country Squire Tidewater. I really like the Country Squire blends. Haven't had a bad one yet. I either smoke that or some of Woody's Norman Invasion. A lot of times I'll smoke the Norman Invasion on the way home. So, anyhow, a scary story. When I was a kid, we were raised out on a farm, and we built our house across the driveway from my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother's family came across the Oregon Trail in 1848 and settled in Dexter and Lowell in Oregon. And actually, they settled in a place called Land X, which is now at the bottom of a reservoir. But anyway, they owned tons of land, and as my grandma got old, there was nobody to take care of her except an aunt down the road a little bit. So we moved and built a house like 50 yards from her place across the driveway. Well, as the oldest child, I got to do all the chores. And one of the chores was feeding the pigs at night. So I would have to walk down a very, very long gravel driveway, 150 yards down to the pig barn, and then feed them in the dark. And I have an incredibly active imagination. I learned to read when I was about 4 years old, and I've been reading ever since, so your mind just builds like that. So I was always a little spooked out, walking this long, spooky place with old abandoned buildings and trees and orchards, and all sorts of noises. Plus, living out in the country, it was dark. We didn't have all sorts of light pollution going on. Anyhow, that being said, there was this one spot as I went by my grandma's old woodshed. There was an aperture in the wall, and of course inside it was always pitch dark, and so you see the light colored reflection of the moon or whatever on the building, and then there'd just be this dark spot. And every time I walk by that dark spot, some unknown reason, I would just get the creeps. I get chills right now, just 50 years later, just thinking about it. And that happened all the time. In the daytime, not a problem, but at night, many years went by, and we eventually moved and bought a farm farther up the hill. And I didn't know till much later, I was probably in my 40s, that inside that aperture, my great-grandfather had hung himself. Now, when we moved there, I was 3, and I remember my great-grandpa. And so at some point in my pre-developed mind, I must have known that. And every time I walked by there, it freaked me out. It was kind of interesting. My great-grandmother was pretty good to me, but apparently a very unpleasant person. And every picture I've seen of her, even when she's like 30, she's old. and sour. Well, apparently my great grandfather, after 60 years of marriage, when he hung himself, his suicide note says, "There, I hope I finally made you happy." So it's sad and hilarious at the same time. But, so that's my childhood creeping out story. Later, when we did buy the place farther up the hill, it was haunted. I actually saw a little old lady apparition in there shortly before the house mysteriously burned down. But a story for another time. So, God bless you. Parson Rick out. Now, this will be downloaded from my phone, so sorry about the quality in advance. Bye.